Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you very much for joining us today on a lovely day that it is. My name is Nigel Canning from Zeisel Networks. I cover the south of England for sales engineering. My colleague Daniel covers the north, so you may have already spoken to one or both of us event at some point. Just going to wait another minute if you don't mind. There's a few more people sort of starting to join at the moment. There are way more people registered that have attended, so just give it a minute or so for them to join. They're getting there, the numbers are going up, but you can just bear with me. Thank you very much indeed. Right, so that looks like those extra people have joined successfully. So as I said, thank you very much. The idea of these webinars is just to give a sort of gentle introduction to, specifically on this one, switching, and how simple it is to register a switch, configure a switch, and then do support with switching and so on and so forth. So it is nothing too strenuous. It's just literally to get across how simple it is to start, and perhaps more importantly, to get across some of the slightly different concepts when you manage networking devices within a sort of cloud-based platform. So these presentation slides will get sent to you afterwards. Some of them I'm going to shoot through really quickly because what I've done is all of the switches that are Nebula capable, I've put information on them in the slides. So it's sort of like a bit of a superset presentation, but I'm not going to go through them all for this particular demonstration. So here we go. So first of all, it's worth just mentioning some slight differences on the type of switches that we've got. So my slides have just zoomed forward. My mouse is playing up to there. Sorry, here we go. What happened there then? Oh, that's more like it. So there are two types of Nebula capable devices. They're what I call pure Nebula devices, and they, from the switch side of things, they are the NSW family of switches. So the NSW switch family can only be managed by Nebula. There is no on-premise standalone web interface. The other type of switch family is what we term Nebula Flex. And this slide here is just showing you an example of a Nebula Flex switch, which in this instance is an XGS 1930 series switch. The idea of the Flex in Nebula Flex is that you can carry on using it standalone if you like, or you can use it under Nebula for free with the free licensing facility without any problem. But the idea is you can go backwards and forwards. You can go backwards to Nebula. Sorry, you can go forwards to Nebula if you're in standalone mode, or you can go back to standalone if you're in Nebula mode. So we're not mandating either. It's whatever works for you, basically. So this is why we basically give this particular slide, which is essentially if you've changed your mind at any point, you can go back. We're not forcing you to do anything. If it works right for you in Nebula, use Nebula. If it works in standalone, use in standalone. But that's the key point that we want to get across with the phrase Nebula Flex. And obviously, what we're basically saying from a hybrid switch point of view is it can be standalone or Nebula managed, but as it says on here, it gives you flexibility. It's always worth pointing out that the actual Nebula cloud platform is free. The only thing you need to pay for is professional licensing, and that's only if you need the professional features, which if anybody's got any issues on professional features, I'm quite happy to answer questions at the end, stay online and answer questions. The platform itself is being heavily invested in by Zeisel. There's been a new release of features come out actually today, which I've got at the end of the slides, so it's progressing. It's a bit like Office 365, you get regular updates, which just adds to the platform basically. And this is just another picture of one of the switches that we're using. So what I want to do as well is just quickly go over what this live equipment list is. So I'm sitting on my laptop with the PowerPoint slides, and it's connected to my home BT broadband router. I've got a Zyxel LTE 3301 Plus router, so that's it's a category 6 4G device. And then I've got a number of switches, Nebula switches and Nebula Flex switches, just hanging off of that LTE device. So the idea that I'm trying to get across is I've got no direct network connection from this presentation laptop to the Nebula equipment. It's all working genuinely via the cloud. I have got a slide here as well. Sorry, a picture here. So basically, the switch at the bottom is an XGS 1930, which ironically now is not with me. It's been sent to another customer. The switch at the top, which is the NSW switch with 4 10 gig ports, that is here, that is registered, and that is live. And I've got an additional switch, which, bear with me a second, if I just pull this over, hopefully you'll see that as well. I've got an additional switch, which is these are the details of it. It's an NSW 128, so it's a 28 port non-PoE pure Nebula device. And it's this switch, which is actually, it's powered on at the moment. It's connected to the LTE device, but it's not registered and hence it's not being managed. So the idea of the presentation really and the demo is to show you how simple it is to add that unregistered device to Nebula, start monitoring it, start configuring it, and some of the support features and so on and so forth. So what we'll do is, this is the next point in the slide. So if you don't mind, what I'm going to do, I'm going to stop the slides for a minute, and I'm going to get onto the, whoops, I'm going to get onto the web interface of Nebula. So I'm just going to drop that up. There we go. So this is just my Google Chrome browser. The Nebula Control Center, i.e. the portal that you manage it on, the URL for it is nebula.zyxel.com. We'll get started. So I'm going to click on Get Started. Obviously, my account. One thing that is of interest, you'll see here that there's an experience, the live demo. If you go to this if you go to this site, you can actually play with Nebula. It's a live environment. Use the account nebula@zyxel.com, use the password Nebula demo, and that will put you into, as I said, a live demo site, which has got all of the devices, all of the Nebula devices hanging off of it, and you can play with it. You can't do any damage. It's basically your account is set in read-only mode, and it's an ideal thing, to be honest, to just dive in and play. So if you're an IT or a network person and you want to just have a play with something to get your head around things, just come to this, use the demo account, and off you go. So I'm going to log in with my account. And the first thing it's going to ask me to do is to select an organization under the Managed Service Portal selection icon. So it's worth just getting across a few things. So the concepts are organizations, which map to obviously a company, and then under an organization you have sites. So the one that I've got more my demo account under is the Zyxel UK Sales. So I'm just selecting Zyxel UK Sales, and then my dashboard comes up. So this is the Nebula Control Center. If you look at the top, as it says here, you've got the Zyxel UK Sales. If you select the pull down, you can see it's selected. And then obviously you can select the sites as well. Now, the dashboard itself at the beginning, when you land on it, obviously it shows you if you've got access points, it shows you wireless clients that are connected. We're obviously interested in switching at the moment. So you can see there's one switch that's actually online. You can look at the PoE power, gateways that are to do with the Nebula Security Gateway, wireless throughput, so on and so forth. So you can see you've got a nice dashboard. You can see everything and you can start drilling down. On the left-hand side, you've obviously got the MSP portal selection, which if you click on that, it takes you back to the same thing. So as with most GUIs, you can get to things via multiple different ways. So this is a top-level organization view, and I can go and drill down into the Wokingham headquarters by clicking on Wokingham headquarters. It takes me back to there. So, sorry, Wokingham headquarters, sorry, I need to go back to the sales one. There you go, back to the sales. So the idea is you've got organization-wide. The GUI is split top and bottom as well on the left-hand side for monitoring, and you've got configuration as well. So as you can see, the overview, change logs, and then you've got all the settings, site creation, inventory, so on and so forth. I'm not going to go into these in too much detail because we're interested in switching, but this split mode of monitoring and configuration applies to all of the devices on the left-hand side. So there's the security gateway, we're obviously interested in switching. My mouse is blowing up and it's just shot off. Apologies. Right. So under switching, we've got a list of switches, the clients, event logs, so on and so forth, and we've got the switch ports, so on and so forth. So what I want to do is, first of all, I want to register the device that currently isn't registered. That takes a couple of minutes to come online. So we'll kick off the registration, let it come online, and then come back to it in a minute. So basically, if we go to organization-wide and look under configuration, you can see the inventory, create site, so on and so forth. So we can basically go there to inventory, see what we've got, and you can see that there's a registration button. Once again, there's multiple ways of doing this. You can actually do it under the site-wide view. So you can go to a particular site and add a device. Now, there we go. If we go to the demo site, there aren't any devices at the moment. So I'll go through the registration process here. So this is going to add an unregistered device to this particular site. And all you need to do is get the device's serial number and the MAC address. As I said, that's the details I'm after there. So I cut and paste the serial number. There's the serial number and the MAC address. So all of this information is on the box, or it's on the bottom of the device itself. Also, it's even simpler than this. We have an app that basically you can scan a QR code that is on the bottom of the switch or is on the outside of the box, and you can do it all within an app. So it's even easier than this. So as you can see, as I've entered the information, and my mouse is shut off again, you see that it's worked out what the model number is. Now I didn't type that in, it just knows that that's the type that's registered to it. So we're going to click OK. Give it a second to give it some thought. There we go. So what we're going to do now is the actual switch should start to become live in a minute. So I'm just going to go back to the site-wide information and we'll have a look at the dashboard and we'll just let it join in its own time. So in a minute, there you go, 2 switches are now online. So we can just click on 2 switches. There we go. So this is the, I'm sorry about the mouse. This is the NSW 228P. That's the switch that's already been online. And you can see that this switch here, the one that starts with BE8EC, that's the new one that's just been added. Now, obviously, you can see that its model number is NSW 128, that its configuration status is not yet up to date. So we'll have a click on it. I'm just touching that there. There we go. And it knows some information about the switch. So you can change its name and stuff like that, which we're going to do in a minute. I'll explain the River Thames on the right-hand side in a minute. And you can look at the status of the switch. So you can see what its local IP address is. So this is obviously a DHCP address that's come from the LTE gateway, what DNS is, what management VLAN it's using. And obviously you can see what its public IP address is here. So this is the, we've got a Vodafone 4G SIM in the router. And for some reason, the Vodafone public IP addresses look like they're in London, so it actually thinks that somewhere in London it's broken out, and that's why it looks like it's sitting in the River Thames. It's not. It's obviously somewhere in that part of London, but it's not. So what is useful, what I normally do, this is an NSW 128P switch, so I normally select it, and we can do some basic configuration by giving it a sensible name. So this is an NSW 128, and I'm just going to add demo on the end. There you go. At this point, if you want to change it to a different site, you can change it. I don't want to, but you can do it. You can put a description in here. What I would say, one of the really good things about Nebula to help your support people in general is, put as much information in it as possible. Put where it's installed. You can take pictures. You can show where they're installed in the cupboard or in the data center, so on and so forth. So the more information you put in here, the better. So when you come back to it in a year's time, I can just say NSW 900 in Nigel's lounge. Save. Obviously, it's not. It is in my lounge, but one day I get moved. So this is a very simple thing in terms of naming devices, bringing them online, so on and so forth. And if we go back to the switch selection, then we can go and have a look at the list of switches. it should now have a friendly name. So there, but now this is the new one that's added. It's already online. The configuration update will come through in a minute. So if we want to go and play with its configuration, we can select it. Then you can, this is all the status, so you can have a look at the switch ports. You can do things like ping devices, you can reboot the switch. If it was, I'll show you in a minute on a PoE switch, if it's a PoE switch, you can power cycle the attached devices. You can dive between the switch monitor and configuration side, like most GUIs, easily. You're in and out of, oops, sorry. At the moment, this is the switch monitor switch level. Oh, my mouse has gone again. Sorry about this. Yes, so we've gone in at the monitor level, yes. But obviously you start to come down to a port of interest and you think, well, I want to have a look at the status of port 27, say we want to, oh, sorry, 28, which we want to perhaps configure as a trunk port. So you can touch it to get its status. It updates the status information. There's nothing connected to it at the moment, so bear with a second. There you go. So it's come down, we've got information on it, and you think, okay, that's fair enough. If you want to do a cable test, you could run the cable test from here. If you've got an SFP on it, which is, this is a SFP port, you could have a look at the information on the SFP. And then one of the things you can do, you can think, okay, I want to configure this port. So all you've got to do is go into there, touch it, and that brings you up the configuration for that port. So I'll show you how to get to this in another way in a minute. One thing I think it's probably worth getting across to people is if you come from a CLI type of background in networking, obviously you tend to be looking at it in a slightly different way, in that you tend to have a list of switches. You tend to have things like you can configure a VLAN and then you add all the ports to that VLAN. You approach this cloud-based management in a different way. This port, for instance, if you want to add it, it's a trunk as well, but if you want to make it an access port and you want to add it to a PVID 22, this is the point. I won't click update in a minute. This is the point at which you do it. So it's slightly different, for instance, in that there is no switch configuration screen which says VLAN. So you don't go switch, select the switch, select VLAN, and then type the ports. You come at it from a port point of view, doing the configuration. So obviously it's slightly different. It becomes, when you get your head around it, it becomes really powerful because you can bulk configure multiple ports, which I'll show you in a minute, very easily with a few clicks of the GUI. And you can have templates. You can apply templates from a site instantly. So you could have one particular configuration which you reference, create a new site, and you can clone it from the template and maintain synchronization between that site as well. So here you can see, you can disable or enable the port, switch off rapid spanning tree, switch off the spanning tree guard. LLDP is enabled at the moment. Obviously set the port speed and the duplex settings, so on and so forth. You can do bandwidth control on it. So if I switch it on, lo and behold, up comes an ingress or an egress bandwidth level on the port. I should mention that the little blue diamonds, hopefully you can see them, that means that that feature is a Nebula professional license feature. So bandwidth control on a per port basis requires Nebula professional licensing to be applied. IPTV, which is all to do with internet group message, like multicast, that's also a professional feature. And then you can change the sort of VLAN type to things like vendor ID or voice VLAN, so it makes it very simple to support voice over IP phones. So if you use a particular manufacturer of phone, you enable that, put the MAC address of the vendor in, and off it goes and automatically assigns that device to the appropriate VLAN when the device powers up and the MAC address comes out. Also, you can control storms, broadcast storms. As I said before, the type of port is a trunk or an access port. And from a radius point of view, from a security point of view, you can do authentication. So I'm just going to close that. So what I'm trying to get across in here, we came into that configuration via the monitoring switch point of view, just by drilling down into the GUI. The other way to get to the configuration is via the switch, the configure section, and switch ports. So if we wait till that comes up. Here we go. So the one that we've just added is the NSW 128, and you can see that all the other ports from the 28P are on there as well. So you can either configure, say for instance I wanted to configure every single port, it wouldn't make much sense, but I could do it at that level. I can do say 4 particular ports. I can go and select them, edit them. There you go, you can see their names and so on and so forth. So every common configuration element of those 4 ports I can implement within this GUI here. Yeah. So if I want to add them to an access VLAN, 99, I can just do that. If I want to switch off rapid spanning tree, if I want to in the short term disable the ports, I can do that all within here, no problems whatsoever. I'm not going to commit that, but that's what you can do. So if you realize how powerful that is, you can impact all of those ports instantly. One of the things that is useful to point out is you see some of the selection criteria under here. You can select multiple ports. Obviously, then you can aggregate them together from LACP, that's that point of view. But you can also, there's a very useful thing for tagging. So if I edit the port, you can apply tags. So you can add a new tag. So say for instance, you wanted to add a tag, data center. You can do that and then add, I won't save them again. You can add different characteristics to the ports. The tags are then visible within the display. So as you can see there, this is what you would see on the GUI. So the tags at the moment is displayed on my screen. Unfortunately, I have to go right down to the bottom and then scroll along and go back up because my monitor is not wide enough. But you'll see that the tag is over there. So you can sort the ports on tags. So you can make things very user-friendly and easy to read. So once again, it's a bit like an extra bit of documentation. You could do a tagging, you could argue, within, if I take these off, within a name of a port. So if I edit the port, you could change its name up here to something different, couldn't you? Whatever you want to call it. But tags and things like that just make it so much easier to find things. You'd be surprised though, it's like self-documenting features are really useful. So there's the basic configuration on a per port level that you can play with. You can also go in and control access control. So this is to do with the management. So these are the Amazon Web Service public IPs that are required to manage the devices. You can just click on that and it'll tell you what that's to do with. You can go in, this is our advanced Igmp, that's to do with multicasting. And as I said, so this is the screen that you go in on a particular switch to enable Igmp snooping. What switches does it apply to, and ports, and so on and so forth. Oops, my mouse has gone again. Obviously, that really is mainly for IPTV solutions, so specifically within like hospitality for video screens or hotel TVs, so on and so forth. Just switch that off and leave that alone. Obviously, we have security as well, so you can add a radius server and you can apply configuration policies to that. So basically, devices that connect to the switch can only be made live and active based on a security policy. You can do things like PoE schedules. So the switch that's currently enabled at the moment is the non-PoE one, but you can see I've actually got a work schedule here. So if you look at a PoE switch, let me just go and get one of the switches. Bear with me a second. So this NSW 228P is a PoE switch. So select that one. Go and, oops, configure the ports. So you can see it's 28P. What I think I did on one of these ports is I enabled it's a PoE schedule unscheduled. I've created a scheduled called PoE work schedule 1. So I won't apply that, but if you go into the switch settings and look at PoE schedules, to just edit it, there we go. So this is my PoE work schedule that you can see that. So from Monday to Friday, from 8 o'clock till 4:30, that port is enabled from a PoE point of view. So all that kind of thing you can do with particularly access points. So you could have the access point powered down from, say, 9 o'clock at night till 7 in the morning, and you'd be surprised how much power you actually save on that. We're doing simple things like that. And obviously from a security point of view as well, it means that nobody can play around with it out of hours. And you can look at the general switch settings as well. So where does what management VLAN do you use? Most of the time you would use VLAN 1. This is to do with the spanning tree configuration and the rapid spanning tree configuration when that is on or off. If you want things like quality of service, if you're not sure what it is, obviously you can click on it. So that's doing the class of service and the quality of service and traffic prioritization. So if you've got voice traffic or if you've got video traffic where you want to make sure it's prioritized, you can do that within here. Port mirroring is all to do with on-site debugging. So all the traffic from one port is mirrored to another one. Things that you mentioned slightly earlier on, which is vendor-based VLANs and voice VLANs. Obviously, that's all to do with simplifying the rollout of a classic switch and a voice over IP phone solution. So all of these things have been made easier and easier within Nebula. So you would just grab the first 3 digits of a MAC address of a Yealink phone or a SNOM phone or Cisco phone, put it into the vendor-based in here, the organizationally unique. This is the first part of the MAC address, the VLAN that it maps to, and then the priority. This is the model list of the switches that support it, and then off you go. And you can obviously add multiple vendor IDs to the switches so that if you've got maybe some SNOM phones or Yealink, they're all taken care of. I'll just cancel that out. So it's very easy, as I said, to register a switch, manage it. You can look at from the monitoring point of view. As I said, you get the list of switches. You start drilling down. You can see what clients are connected. In this instance, I had a Raspberry Pi last time, but I've lost a Raspberry Pi to a colleague. So you would see clients listed on here. You can have a look at the event log, see what's going on. So that's when the device came up, its configuration has been saved, so on and so forth. Some of the other things from a support point of view with not just switching, but security gateways and Wi-Fi as well, is firmware management. So you can see under the site-wide, you've got a summary, but you've also got firmware management. So let it get updated. So you can see that the switch that was already registered online, which was the PoE, the 200 model, the firmware for that is up to date. This switch here, the NSW100 that I added, it's on old firmware. Now, what you can do with professional licensing, and even with the free, you can schedule each different class of device, so access point, switches, or security gateways. You can schedule when the firmware upgrade will go through. So rather than, for instance, do the firmware on the security gateway and you lose internet access, you want to do perhaps the access points first at sort of 2 a.m. You can do the switches at 3 a.m. and then finally you can do the security gateway at, say, 4 a.m. But you can create the schedules and you can literally, if you like, it's Windows Update left in automatic mode, just get on with it. So if I want to upgrade the firmware on the new switch that I added, all I've got to do is select it. Yeah, obviously it's going to go to probably version 3 point something or other, and I'm going to click upgrade now, and that is it. So that switch will go off and upgrade it. I can look at the LEDs. Obviously there's a blue LED that's just lit on the front of the display, and it's going to go and do the upgrade. There's obviously nothing I can do now. You just need to let it get on and do its thing. But if you've got tens or hundreds of switches at different sites, different organizations, so on and so forth, from an efficiency of supporting your customers and your own customers' efficiency from a managed service point of view, things like automatic firmware upgrades or scheduled firmware upgrades or simple remote management of the devices is trivial within Nebula. I've got a switch that is currently elsewhere at the moment. I'll just go and Yes, it's this one here, the Pro Labs. So this switch here is the XGS 1930. It's not online at the moment, but this switch is over in Gloucester. So if I want to go and fiddle with it and change its configuration, I can go in here, say for instance, they want something done to port 24 on the trunk. I can go in, wait till it updates. Because it's offline, there you go. Hit the configure button. I can go in and change whatever changes that they've required. Obviously click update, but I'm not going to. Then when it comes online, it will automatically contact Nebula, pull down the configuration, and that's done. And that switch is not here. This particular XGS 1930 switch is now in Gloucester doing some testing. So all I did is I called APC out, sent the switch over to them. They put it online. I'm not doing it today. And that was it. So if you haven't, for instance, at the moment in these difficult times, got physical access to a site, you can just ship the switch to site. If you know that there's somebody within the organization there that can physically install it, as long as they can plug port 1 into an internet connected segment with an IP address and DNS and such like, you can then manage that switch remotely. All you need to know is either or get hold of a picture of the serial number and the MAC address, or get hold of the QR code, or talk them through registering it, and it's done. And then you can then take over and start configuration and so on and so forth. So it really is as simple as this. So in summary, really, you've got organizations, you've got sites, you've then got devices within sites, and you just go in there, have a look at the status of them at the monitor level, and then you can just start drilling down. Just as you would in any GUI, you find a switch, click on it, off you go. So there's like a million and one ways of getting to a port from a configuration point of view, or from a firmware upgrade point of view. So it's quite straightforward. What I was going to do is, if you don't mind, just going to go back to the slideshow, because there were some other things in the slides I was just going to show. So I did want to make it clear that, let me go back a bit. Initially, under Nebula, this is going back perhaps 18 months, we had the main Nebula switch was the GS1920 V2. So now we've got the GS1920 V2, we've got the XGS 1930, we've got this switch here, which is the XS3800, which is a lovely switch. It's a full 10 gigabit layer 2 plus switch with multi-gig ports. If you look at it, the reason I put all these in the slides is that they'll come to you. So half the ports are SFP plus, and the other half are shared multi-gig and SFP plus. So you've got copper multi-gigabit ports, so 1, 2.5, 5 gig and 10 gig, and SFP pluses as well. So an incredibly flexible switch. Under Nebula as well, this is the description of the ports and so on and so forth. A really ideal switch for being at the core, or from high-end access points, so on and so forth. Another switch that's come out recently is the XS1930. Once again, Nebula capable. It's got much higher capacity PoE, so it supports the BT spec PoE. So the XS1930 12 HP, the first 8 ports are PoE capable, but they've got the full 375 watts that can be used. And once again, this is a Nebula Flex capable switch. Whisper silent. So this is the description of the 2 different types. One's PoE, one's non-PoE. The characteristics of multi-gigabit, visualization of the port speeds via different color LEDs. I'm going through these really fast because I'm aware it's half an hour. But I just wanted to point out how the switch family now, oops, Microsoft PowerPoint has stopped working. Fantastic. Oh no, yeah. My PowerPoint has just crashed and is restarting. Sorry, everyone. Oh dear. Let me just get to that particular slide. Sorry about this, everyone. There we go. So this is back to the XS1930, and this is just showing you with the increase in PoE power that's available, that not only can you do standard sort of Wi-Fi access points, but you can do the newer Wi-Fi 6 access points, or you can power even laptops directly, or you can do point-to-zoom cameras that maybe are outside, that've got little heaters in them and so on and so forth. Really good switch. So it's an ideal, and we've brought it out to work with our Wi-Fi 6 access points. That we obviously Wi-Fi 6 to really push the high-end ones. You need the increased capacity from a power point of view. Also, it's quickly worth pointing out, We've got a brand new range of switches, the GS2220s, which are our replacement to the very popular 2210s. Once again, basically it's an update, so it's what the 2210 is or was, with Nebula added on top, and obviously with our new, some people refer to it as this sort of carbon fiber look. But obviously it's got cloud management, whisper quiet operation, so it's basically got intelligent fans, consumption mode PoE, increased memory from a software point of view. You can see that it's supporting full layer 2 features, particularly useful for multicast, so IPTV, so on and so forth. This is just summarizing that is a Nebula Flex, so you can Nebula manage it or standalone manage it. Summary of the features. So this is just IPTV. The other thing that's literally just come out, and I'm going to explain that in a minute, is that our surveillance switches are now coming under Nebula. So they were a range of switches that have been out for about 9 months now. Very useful features, very special features for surveillance switches, increased up to 250 meters cable run lengths, some sophisticated features to monitor cameras and reset them as required. That's the feature list. As I said, I'm going through these very quickly, but this is an important point I wanted to get to. This email, or this particular text, came out in an email today. So the Nebula Control Center, or the Nebula platform version 9.2, is supporting these additional switches. So as you can see here, that the GS2220 and the GS1350 series switches are being added to Nebula. And this is, I think it's early July this comes out. So you've got a firmware upgrade to those switches and feature upgrades to the actual platform. And then you'll find that these devices are configurable within Nebula. So all these features are going to be live in about less than a month's time. And this just highlights how, the reason I put it on there, this is literally a cut and paste from the email that I received out of the blue today. So basically it's just an indication that the platform is rolling forward, general feature upgrades, support changes. There's things like if you've got professional licensing applied to an organization, you can have direct chat within the portal with support. So if you've got an issue that want to discuss it, you get uplifted support. All the kind of things perhaps you might need for increased support. So there we go. So I was going to set some time aside at the end for Q&A. This is virtually at the end, so it's got a bit quicker at the end. It's also worth pointing out that there's an MSP program, what's called the MSP Evolve program. So if you go to this website, you will be able to apply. It might be worth your while having a look at it if you're an MSP or you're thinking about creating services, because Nebula is absolutely ideal for creating services, deploying them, managing them, and supporting them in a very cost-efficient manner, which is really what one of the great advantages of the cloud. So wherever you can get an internet connection, you can manage your devices, you can deploy them, you can change configurations for your customer. So you can offer a really good level of support very cost effectively. So if anyone's got any questions, I'm quite happy to hang around for the next 5 or 10 minutes or whatever. Thank you very much for joining. Sorry, PowerPoint crashed in the middle. And if anybody has got any sort of specific, more in-depth questions that they've got, my colleague and myself, Danny, we're quite happy to do sort of private one-to-one online training or more in-depth kind of Q&A, that sort of thing. So just email us. You can either email us at sales@zeisel.co.uk, or my email address is nigel.canning@zeisel.co.uk, or just give us a ring in the office. So once again, thank you very much indeed, and I'll just hang on and answer any questions for anybody. All right, so thank you very much, everybody. I've answered all the questions, and I hope you have a good afternoon and you stay safe and well. And as I said, if you do need anything, please contact us at Zeisel office, nigel.canning@zeisel.co.uk, or the main sales email address is sales@zeisel.co.uk. Thank you very much, everybody. Have a good afternoon.